So as a consumer, eventually, you're going to want to take your money and invest it. Okay. Now we could be talking about stocks, talking about bank accounts, savings accounts, all that kind of stuff. And you have options. But let's talk about what I think we talked about this early on in this chapter. But a bank will take your money and they will store it for you, right? But it's not like they got a bunch of lockers that they just put your money in and sits there until you come and request it. Okay, your money is not physically there. Your money, once you give it to the bank takes your money and they invest it. Okay, they might invest it in multiple things. They usually invest it in stocks and markets and realty. Okay, so they go buy homes with it, especially if the home market is good. Maybe you guys have seen like Superior has you always drive by somebody's house that's for sale and it'll be for sale by Superior. They've purchased that home and they're trying to now obviously make money on that. They don't just take your money and let it sit there and just do nothing with it, because there'd be no purpose of you giving them your money versus burying it in a coffee can in your backyard, right? It would do the same thing. So they invest it, and then you get a portion of that investment. Okay, that they get. They call it a dividend, but you get a percent of that when they realize a gain off of you. Now, savings accounts and checking accounts, those are very minimal in terms of the interest rate that they provide you. Okay, but do you guys know what interest rate is? Yeah. What interest is? What's interest? Enlighten me.
It's like a percentage of money.
Okay, so it's a lot like, so you guys know what like sales tax is, right? Okay, it's a lot like that. And the fact that interest, okay, which we call I, is equal to your principal times the interest rate. Okay, so this shouldn't be terrible. Okay, so principal. This is. All right, so principal is the amount that you're going to invest, right? Okay. So let's say that we have $1,000. Okay. R is your interest rate. Okay. So if I multiply this, so let's say that we have let's just make it easy. Let's go, no. Let's go 10%. And that's crazy interest rate. Okay, but let's go 10%. Okay. What is 10% of 1,000? If I multiply those together, it's 100. Okay. So the interest received, the interest gained here is $100. Okay, so how much money would you have then at your disposal in your account if you made an interest off of $1,000? What'd you start with? Started with 1,000. Your money sitting in the bank, whatever account this is in, just gained you another 100. So now you have a total of $1,100, right? Okay, so that's the same idea as like taxes, but taxes, instead of adding to your account, we remove, right? Okay. But you know, I make the comparison, like if I'm at the store and I have, let's say I make a purchase of $100, but there is a 7.5% interest rate or tax rate. Don't want to take to figure out that tax. Don't want to take 100 times 0.075, and it gives me what's 100 times 0.075? Move the decimal place 2 spots to the right, $7.50, right? So then how much do I actually pay? $107.50, right? Okay. That's the same idea here. Okay. But the idea is that this is money that I'm earning or keeping. This is money that I'm dispersing or giving away. Does that make sense? Okay. But interest is principal times rate. Okay. Say again. Let's talk about that here in a minute. A better formula for this, okay, because usually we don't want a formula just for interest. We want a formula for how much money you currently have. Okay? So my current money would be principal, right? That's what I invested initially. Plus then what we made off of that. So Austin said we had $1,100. This was the $1,000, and this was the $100, right? Does that make sense? What is common in those two things? The principal. Can I factor that principal out? So you get principal times 1 plus R. Okay? That, a lot of times, I'm going to write it this way. It's an amount after time t. So the amount of money that I have at my disposal after time t is equal to the principal times 1 plus R. Okay? Now I'm going to adjust that a little bit, because what happens is that we will do this in time periods. Okay? Meaning that usually, and we'll start with this, let's talk about annual time. So we do this, when we say annual, that's 1 year, right? Every year. So 365 days elapse, and now I've made $100, so I've got a total of $1,100, right? Okay? But 1 year would allow this here, this exponent, to be a 1. Okay? If I do it for 2 years, or 3 years, or 4 years, that can change. So what we do is we allow that to be t. Okay? And that's the time in which we leave our money in the account. Does that make sense? Because interest rates are, a lot of times they're called APRs, annual percentage rate. Okay? Key phrase there being annual. Okay? So interest rates are always given as a yearly amount. Okay? So might ask, what kind of rates are we talking about? Okay? So all of these types of things we could talk. We talk about home rate, like interest rates on homes right now. I think they're probably in the 2 to 3% rate. So let's just see what the interest rate on a mortgage. What are today's rates? All right, so current interest rates for mortgages, so this would be money that you're paying out, in the 3s, okay, and that's pretty low. Because of when the pandemic hit, these things kind of fell real bad. I think I had an interest rate of like 4.8 when I bought my home, or the last time I refinanced. I refinanced when COVID hit, and I got a 2.8%. Okay, which saved me in the duration of my loan. It was like $80,000 that it ended up saving me. Okay, so it's kind of crazy because it's over 30 years. But you can see there's all kinds of different types of rates. Okay, this means that I would pay it off in 30 years. This means I pay it off in 20 years. Okay, so if the bank was loaning me this money to buy my home, if I could pay them off faster, they're going to give me a smaller interest rate. Does that make sense? If I can pay them off faster, they're going to penalize me less for borrowing their money. Does that make sense? That's kind of a good trade-off, right? 15 years, obviously lower. 10 year. I've always been taught to be cautious of ARMs. Okay, They're adjusted rates. Okay, means that, and sometimes called balloon rates, which means that early on in my ownership of my home, I might have a mortgage that's $500 a month. But in the last months of my mortgage payments might be $4,000 a month. Okay, so it balloon as the loan starts to mature, the payments get larger and larger at the end. Okay, every time when you buy a home and you sign the papers and everything, they give you it's called an amortization. It's hard to say for me. Amortization paper, which shows you every single payment that you're going to make, and that allows you to maybe make the decision. Okay, is this kind of loan that I want? But those are interest rates for homes. Cars, I think, are currently probably at the same rate. Okay, let's look at a savings. Okay, well, here's, what is this, Citibank? No, that's not Citibank. CIT, I don't know what that is. Here's loans for, and obviously loans of cars are different based on the age of the car. But here you're seeing some loans for some interest rates for cars. The older the car, the higher the interest rate. Okay, mortgage, home equity loans. So home equity loan is I want to update my home. I'm going to go take this loan out so that I can update my home. This is all their loans. So here's deposit rate. So, this is money that I'm putting in, and I'm committing to leaving it in for a certain term. You're seeing here that they're not even 0.25%. They're pretty small. Okay, and that's what you would find out. Here's money market accounts. So money market are usually a higher return than normal savings accounts. His returns on checking accounts very small, and you have to hit certain thresholds. Okay, they're gonna, obviously, the more money you put in, they're gonna say, hey, this is a better customer. We're gonna benefit them. We're gonna give them a higher return because they are going to commit more money to our bank. That kind of makes sense. Does anybody have a checking account, savings account through a bank, local bank? Every year you should get a notice that says, hey, this year you've earned 38 cents on interest, because that's usually what it turns out to be. It's very, very small amount. You got a penny? But this stuff here that we're talking about with exponentials are functions that allow us to realize how much money we are either spending or investing and returning, or what we can expect to return to ourselves after a certain period of time. So this is the formula that I want to talk about right now. Okay, we will eventually adjust this. Okay, but let's say that I have a scenario that says, type this out. Okay, so take a minute and write that down. We're going to do that again. right, so, excuse me. Yeah. We've got $1,300. So what is $13,000? $13,000. That is the amount that I'm going to invest, right? So in my formula, that is what number or what letter? The P. That's the principal. Okay. Now, when you get to your homework, this is what I was looking for a moment ago, and I kept messing you up. Sometimes your homework might call that capital A as well for amount. Okay, but P is more appropriate. Formulas, author to author, might change a little bit. Okay, but the amount that you're investing, whether they call it A or they call it P, is going to be that number right there. Okay, so we go 13,000. Okay, now it's going to be 1 plus my interest rate. What's my interest rate? 2.5. But that's a percent. Okay, we never do mathematics with the percent. You always have to change it to a decimal, right? So it'd be 1 plus 0.025. Okay? So whenever you have that percent symbol, that means move your decimal place 2 spots to the left, right? Okay? And now T is the number of years that I'm going to leave this in the account. So T would be 10 years. Okay? My hope is that we see it this is exponential. If I do a little bit of work here, okay, 1 plus 0.025 would be that number right there, correct? Is this exactly what we talked about yesterday, where we have a number like B out front times A raised to some amount that can change? And that variable T is what's going to really change throughout this problem. Because I might ask, okay, well, what is it after 9 years? What is it after 10 years? What is it after 11 years? So if we type this into our calculator, it's a large number. So 13,000 was 1.025, okay, raised to the 10th power, okay. So that is the amount that I'm going to have in my account when I'm done, okay. Now think about what that amount looks like, okay, compared to what we started with. We started with that, right? So I'm going to call this A for amount, call this P for my principal. Can I subtract those to figure out what I actually made by just letting my money sit there? So I can go P minus A or A minus P, regardless of the order. It's going to be the same number. One's going to be positive, one's going to be negative. But $3,641. So I basically said to this bank or this financial institution, whatever it may have been, and I said, I have $13,000 that is just sitting here. Okay, I'm not doing anything with it. Okay, I don't have it earmarked for anything. I'm going to put it into your money market account that is giving me 2.5%. Okay, and it sits there. They use it for 10 years, however they need to, and on the anniversary of the 10-year anniversary, I can go pull that money out, and I have made $3,641 by not doing anything, not adding to it, not doing a single thing. Does that make sense? Okay. What happens? So this money, okay, that we've made here is small, or should be small, in comparison to what the bank has probably made when they took my money and invested it. Does that make sense? Okay, and that's how banks build themselves. That's how they get bigger and bigger. Okay, through more and more people investing. Okay, and even if they make a small amount of, not every bank is going to make a huge amount of money off of every person. Okay, obviously they're not. If I'm only returning, 38 cents a year on my savings account, they're probably not making much off that either. But they have hundreds of thousands of people investing. Does that make sense? So if I think about hundreds of thousands of 38 cents, it's quite a bit of money. Okay, so Does this kind of make sense? Okay, if I left it in for an 11th year, okay, so all we have to do is we can change that number right there to 11, and you can see that now it grew even more, right? So here's the idea. Here's what we can eventually do is say, okay, I'm interested in, and then that's where we're leading to in this process. Does anybody have something right now that they really want to buy but don't have the money for? Okay. So you want to buy a Jeep? You want to buy, what do you want? A Rubicon, brand new, 50 grand. Okay. So Ella wants a $50,000 vehicle. Okay, she wants to buy that. You want to buy that with cash? Okay. So and this is usually what we could either do, like, I'm gonna buy with cash that day, or maybe I've figured out that I'm comfortable with a car payment of, let's say, $400 a month. Okay. That car payment right there probably going to be around $700 a month. Okay, so let's say, well, it's not bad, but it's really bad if you only make $600 a month. Yeah. So let's say that we figure out that maybe I don't need all the $50,000. Okay, maybe I only need $20,000, or maybe I only need $15,000, and that will make my monthly payment manageable for me. Okay. Well, let's just say in this case that that Ella wants to pay 100% in cash, $50,000. Okay. Got any money sitting around right now, Ella, that you're not using, like in your bank account? Okay. How much you got? Okay. Let's just say Ella has. Let's say she has $3,000. Okay. Let's say that she sets this in a bank, and the bank says we will give you an interest rate of 2% just by sitting in the account. Okay. We should be able to solve eventually for that value of T up there. Okay. And I'm going to go through the algebra here to show you what amount that T has to be, which would be the number of years she has to wait before she can pull out $50,000 and pay for this car. But we should be able to do this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take 50,000. Okay, I'm going to try to get this 1.02 to the T by itself. So how can I get that thing by itself? What would I have to divide both sides by? Does that make sense? Okay, so that's going to give me now, let's see here. That's not going to give me that. Okay, now we have a function that we haven't talked about yet. It's called a logarithm that's going to allow me to do this. Okay, but I'm going to take the logarithm of this side and this side, which would look like that. And then we're going to divide that then by so then we're going to divide this eventually by, and I'll show you how to do this stuff in the coming days, the weeks. And that is the number of years that Ella would have to wait. That's a lot. So you're going to be really old and wrinkly when you're driving your Rubicon at 142 years old. Okay. So what does that tell her she has to do? She probably has to start with a larger principal. Okay. So let's say that she has, maybe it's more realistic to say that she has $30,000. Okay. Okay. So some people will do this. So like I have a desire when I retire to Oh. Awesome. All right, so I want to, when I retire, to like buy a mobile home, like an RV. Okay. I want to buy a boat. Okay, and I want to travel the United States. That's what I want to do. Okay. But I want to be able to buy that and not have to make payments on that. Does that make sense? So at some point in my career, okay, because I got like probably around, by the time I get to the point where I can retire, the state will probably have changed the retired years and all. I probably got about 30 more years of teaching. Okay, between 20 and 30 years. So down the road at some point, I'm going to sit down with my wife and we're going to say, okay, well, this is how much money we have. Okay, so how much money we're not really concerned about using right now or needing. So let's invest that, okay? And we can find somewhere to invest it, and so that we can figure out, when we retire, on the day we retire, we can pull that money out and we can go buy the RV that we want or go buy the boat that we want. Does that kind of make sense? Because if you can buy something up front, okay, if you can buy something up front with cash, it's going to save you a lot of money. Okay, let me see if I can show you something here real quick with this. An amortization of, let's say that we have a home that is, this is how much is my monthly principal, so let's see here, your estimated monthly payment. Okay, so let's say we got a home price here of, let's just make a nice round number. Let's go 20, okay. Okay, so we got a home. Let's go $200,000. Okay, so right now, because of the market, like the market right now, like that's not an unreasonable price for a home right now. Okay, now a lot of loans, like what's called a conventional loan, will ask you to pay a 20% down payment. Okay, well 20% of this would be $40,000. Okay, so let's say we have that. Let's say we have $40,000 just sitting in an account that we can pay. Okay, interest rate they're saying is 3.17. Let's see if they give me my amortization here. I will start. Well, what I was trying to look for is I want you guys to see that if I agree to buy a home, okay, and I do it in 30 years, if I go buy a home that's $200,000, what I pay for that in 30 years is going to be closer to $400,000, okay, because of how interest rates work. So I was trying to see if I was hoping this calculator would show it. I'll find one, and we'll start with class tomorrow that way. To show that idea. But this shows you like the breakdowns. If this is the house I'm going to buy with these interest rates and all that kind of stuff, you can see this called an amortization schedule. And it tells you what your payment is every month for the duration of that loan. But look at this real quick. Okay, my loan payment right now is $887. Okay, look at how much of that goes to the principal. Only $266 goes to the $200,000. Does that make sense? So paying that off. The rest of the 800 and whatever amount is, and it's at $699 there, I think it was. No, so $422. That $422, that money is paying just the interest off the home. Does that make sense? And the interest rate was, what did I say? It was, I think 3% right there. So when you buy a car, when you buy a home, your payments, the initial payments, you're going to pay off all the interest. And the reason you do that is because the bank is trying to get their money back from you as fast as they can. When you get down to the end of the loan, now you see at the end of the loan, the interest isn't all that much. So okay, so here it is doing that. So I bought it, and it's not as drastic as I said it was going to be, but I bought a home for $200,000. Okay, now I guess it is kind of drastic because I bought it for $200,000. I put $40,000 on it, right? So I took a loan out that was worth $160,000. $248,000 is actually what I paid back on that loan. Does that make sense? So I borrow. So they say you can borrow $160,000. because when you were all said and done with this in 30 years, you're paying us back $248,000. Does that make sense? Okay. So I paid them back, what, $88,000 more than what I borrowed, and that's because of the interest rate. Huh? Well, so that's, would you say, is it stupid or stealing? Stupid. So, I mean, that might be a reason why some people rent, okay? But if I rent, I'm always paying something, right, for until I die, okay? Or maybe you save more money before you go buy a home, okay? Some people will flip a home, right? Some people buy a cheaper home to live in for 5-10 years as a starter home or something like that. They will flip it, and then that money that they make off of that then will go to their second home, so that the amount that they pay back to the bank will be less because we have a larger down payment, so you don't have to borrow as much. The more you borrow, the more you're going to give back in return in interest. Okay? So those are all things that we'll get into in the next couple of days. Talk about